Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Samya Chaturvedi and I'm going to discuss here the Unit 3 Arrays and Functions in Computer Programming for Problem Solving using C. So, in this video tutorial, we will be looking out at how to work with arrays in C programming. So the objective of this video lecture is that first we will be focusing on what is an array. After that, we'll be looking into then what is the need of array. So why we need array in C programming. Afterwards, we'll be discussing that how to declare what is the syntax of defining an array in C. Further, we'll be going towards the access elements of an array. How can we do that? And what are the various methods to initialize an array? So I'm sure after completion of this video tutorial, you will be able to answer all these questions. So let's begin. Array is a data structure in C programming which can store a fixed size sequential collection of elements of the same data type. Mind that in the slide I have intentionally kept some of the words bold, like fixed size, sequential and same data type. These words are kept bold to put some emphasis so that you remember that an array is a data structure which stores fixed size sequential collection of elements and all the elements will be of same data type. An array in C is a collection of items stored at contiguous memory locations and elements can be accessed randomly using indices of an array. Now when we say contiguous memory allocation, that means we are talking about the data items will be stored on the continuous memory location. And because we have the indexes, we can randomly access the array elements using those indices or index values. Array can be used to store collection of primitive data types such as integer, float, double, characters, etc. of any particular type. I'm not sure whether you have heard or not, but there are some data types available with C programming language. The basic are primitive data types like integer, float, double, character, long, and then we have derived data types such as function data type, pointer data type, array data type, your structure and union data type. So when we talk about derived data type, the derived data types are actually composed of or made up of multiple elements of some primitive data type. So we can say that in case of array, if there is an integer array, that means it is going to hold the elements of integer data type. While if we declare a float array, then the float array is going to hold elements of float data types. So this is the introduction about that what array means. Now we understood that what array means, what are the basic properties associated with array, and what are different primitive data types which can be put into the array. That means what could be the elements of array. So it can be an integer elements, it can be float elements, it can be double element, it can be character, it can be you can say long, short, There are plenty. But if we have declared it as an integer array, that means all the elements will be of integer data type. Let's move on to the next point, that is, we understood about what is an array. Now the question arises, why we need array? Before going into why we need array, let us see the pictorial representation of array. When I say about array, then, and we were talking about that it will be having some indices and there will be contiguous allocation. So let us talk about first that once I say that we are going to declare an array in programming, and what should come into your picture, that how the array will look like. So an array is nothing but a sequential blocks. Each is of fixed size and each element or each indices is representing one element of array. Now as you can see in the slide, I have shown array size as 5. So we have made 5 blocks in a continuous manner. The index on the array will start from the value 0 and that will go till n minus 1. Here we have a size 5. So the last index in this array will be n, which is 5 minus 1. Okay, so this type of block should come into your brain or picture or in your pictorial memory when we talk about array. Let us know some more about arrays. Okay, so our question was why we need arrays. Now consider a scenario where you need to find out the average of 5 numbers. Easy. When I say 5 numbers, that means what you are going to do? You are going to take 5 numbers, sum them up and then divide by 5, because this is the formula or the logic of getting the average. Now consider that you need to write a C program to do so. So what you will be doing? You will be defining 5 such numbers. Okay, if those are integer data type, then you will put an integer variable. And after defining all 5 variables, then you will sum them up and then calculate the average. Now consider it was easy task because we only have 5 elements. Now consider the situation as given an example that we have to find out the average of 100 integer numbers entered by user. So in case of C, you again have ways to do so. The first and basic way, which you probably know till now, is you define 100 variables with integer data type and then perform 100 scanf operations to store the entered values in the variables and then at last calculate the average of them. Now the second option, which actually includes our array, because we are going to define the need of array. So have a single integer array to store all the values, loop the array to store all the entered values in the array and later calculate the average. Now tell me which solution is better according to you. Obviously the second solution. It is convenient to store same data types in one single variable and later access them using array index. But if you choose the first option, then you have to write 100 variables, then you have to perform 100 scanf operations, and then afterwards you will put your logic of average value. So that will be a tedious job, that will increase number of lines in your code, and when you declare 100 variables, then it could be confusing that what was your first variable name, what was your 99th variable name, likewise. So array gives you easiness, it gives the clarity in the code when we have same data type elements. Okay. Now let's move forward towards the memory representation, because when I say that array and a picture should come into your mind that there is certain blocks which are continuous manner. Now in the initial slide I said that it will be in contiguous manner. So we will be understanding by this memory representation that what is exactly the meaning of this contiguous memory locations. The following diagram represents an integer array that has 12 elements. The index of the array starts with 0. Please mind, I have intentionally kept this line as bold because it is very important point to remember. So the array having 12 elements has indexes from 0 to 11. That means if I say the size of the array is 12, then the number of elements will be 12. But when we talk about index values, the index will start from 0. And when we say index is going to start with 0, then our last location, the last element would be at index 11, which is n minus 1, as you can see. Now in the diagram, as you can see that the memory location for the first element, when I say first, that means at the 0th index, the memory location for the first element is 200. This is a hypothetical value for memory location just to make you understand. Then the next element is at address location 204 and the index value is 1. So you can see that the first element is of integer data type, will take 4 bytes to hold. So what we will be doing, the first address, this is called as base address. The first address once we know, and if we add the size of the element, which is here 4 bytes, if we add that, then we can get actually the address, memory address of the next element. Likewise, if we add the fixed size length, which is 4 in this case for integer, if we add that to the second element, we can reach to the address of third element and so on. Please mind, when I say the first element, that doesn't mean that you have to look for index 1. That means we are talking about the first element of array, and the first element will be having the index value definitely 0. So whatever element, if I am talking about nth element, the index will be n minus 1. Let us move to some other objectives from this tutorial. Up till this point, we have covered that what is an array, what is the need of the array in C programming. We have looked up about the memory location representation, that how contiguous memory locations are done. Now the time came for understanding of how to declare an array. To declare an array in C, you have to specify the type of elements and the number of elements required by an array as follows. As you can see in the slide, there is a syntax in which first we will be writing data type, that which type of elements will be going to store in this particular array, whether it is integer or float or character or long, short, depends. Next to that, we'll be writing the array name. So this array name, the user is going to decide that whatever you prefer as a name for your array. And in the square braces, we define array size. That means we provide the information that this array is going to hold how many elements. Okay, so the syntax is first write the data type, then write the name, and then inside the braces write number of elements. For example, I have written integer data and in the braces 100. So here integer is my data type. Data is the name of my array. You can define your own array. If your name is something, if you want to define the array with the name value, if you want to define the array with the name, let's say marks, let's say roll number, whatever you prefer. And inside the braces I have written 100. That means this array, this data array is going to hold 100 elements. So when we declare an array with the name data of integer type and its size is 100, meaning is that it can hold 100 integer values. Now, it is important to note that the size and type of an array cannot be changed once it is declared. I have kept this line intentionally bold because it is very important to understand that the size and type of an array cannot be changed once it is declared. As you can see here, we have defined the type integer and we have defined the size or declared the size as 100. So we cannot modify this size of the array as well as the type of values which can be held as an element in the array. Suppose you want to use a float data type for 100 elements again, then you need to define another array with the data type float. You cannot modify the existing one. Let us move ahead towards some more clarity in array. Now we had a discussion over what is an array, why we need array, what is the pictorial formation of array, how and in what way we can declare, what will be the syntax of array. Now the question arises, suppose we have already declared an array, then how do we access the elements of array? Because ultimately our goal is to access the elements, the data part. So the one line simple answer is you can access elements of an array by indices or index values. Suppose you declare an array, let's say with a float data type, and the array name is mark and we have declared the size as 5. Now you can see in the slide that the pictorial formation of this particular array will be like this. We'll be having 5 consecutive or you can say continuous blocks, each of equal size and capable of holding float data element. Now the first element is marked as is mark 0. So our first index value is 0, where my first element of this array will be kept. Then the second element, the index value will be 1. I have already discussed n-1 we'll be using. So and then so on. This is the pictorial representation of empty array where we do not kept any value up till now. It is the only structural part. Now there are few keynotes which you have to remember, that array have 0 as the first index, not 1. Why I am telling again and again? Because when you talk about any list or any queue, we start with the sequence, and in the sequence we always have first thing. And when we say first, automatically it came into picture that first, that means value is 1. But here the case is different. The first value, the first index is starting from 0. If the size of an array is n, so to access the last element, the n minus 1 index is used. As we have already done in previous example sets, that when we have a size 5, the index values will range from 0 to 4. So if you want to access the last element, that will be on the index value 4. Now suppose the starting address of mark 0, when I write mark 0 in braces, that means I am talking about the array with index 0, that means array element index 0. If suppose this address is 2120D, again this is a hypothetical memory address which I am using for making you understand. Then the address of mark 1, that means now we have shifted from first element to second element index, that will be 2124D. Again, this is because the size of a float is 4 bytes and we are continuously, we have the addresses, memory addresses in contiguous manner. So once the size of first element is over, then our second element will start. Okay, so this is the way how we can access the array elements. So with this example set and pictorial representation, it is pretty much clear that if you know the address of first element of array, you can, and you know the data type, and then you know the fixed size according to data type, then you can always traverse all the elements in the with respect to memory location, and you can always access the element by the index values also. Now the question arises that how you initialize an array. We have talked about how to declare, we have talked about how to access, now how to initialize. Now please remember, declaration and initialization are two different things. Declaration means I'm going to tell you something that this is going to happen. Initialization, now we are putting actual content, now we are putting actual values into the elements of the array. Earlier we were declaring the data type will be integer, the array name will be this, and the size of the element, the size of the array will be this. That means how many elements we can hold. Now here comes, in case of initialization, we put actual data values to that particular address locations. It is possible to initialize an array during declaration. For example, if I write integer mark and in the square braces 5 is equal to, as you can see, 19, 10, 8, 17, 9. By this, here integer is my data type, mark is my array name. In the square braces, if I write 5, that means the size of the array is 5. It can hold up to 5 elements. Now this equal to sign is an assignment operator through which what we are doing, we are assigning the 5 values to elements. That means now the first element of array mark is 19, the second element is 10, the third element is 8, the fourth element is 17, and the fifth element is 9. Please remember, when I say the first element, then the index of the first element will be 0. When I say second element, the index of the second element will be 1, and likewise. So this is one way. You can also initialize an array like this, as you can see in the slide, the second way, that you define the data type, you define the name, and in the square braces you do not write the number, the size, the elements, and you write the assignment operator which is equal to, and you write 5 elements. I have taken purposely exactly same elements here. In the first case, we have defined the size. In the second case, we have not written that size in the square braces, but we are actually initializing with 5 elements. So by default, we haven't specified the size, but the compiler will know that its size is 5 as we are initializing it with 5 elements. So as of now, both these statements are going to create exactly same array. But in case of second, if we increase one more element at the time of initialization, let's say after 9 I put another element like 5, then by default the compiler will know that its size is now 6 because we are initializing it with 6 elements. So this mark will become integer type of array which holds integer data, and according to the values initialized, according to the elements initialized with, the size will be decided as 6 in case we have 6 elements, or further if you have 9 elements, the size will become 9. So these are the two ways to initialize an array. We have declared the array, we have accessed the array, we have initialized the array. Now that's not the whole part of programming. We've understood the basic things, but in case of programming, when the logic demands, you need to change the value of the array elements. So how do we do so? Suppose we have array, again I'm taking the same example, array name is mark, which is holding integer data type, and the size of the array is 5. The elements also purposely I have taken same to make you understand better. 19, 10, 8, 17 and 9. Now if we want to make, suppose our logic says, now if we wish to make a change in the value of third element. Please mind, when I say third element, that means the index value will be 2. Because for first it is 0, for second it is 1, and for third it will be 2. So if my logic says that I wish to change the value of third element to -1, then we will write a simple statement that name of the array, inside the square braces you provide the index value, that at what location you want to make changes, and with the assignment operator which is equal to, we simply write the value which is -1 in this case. Please mind, the array elements can hold only single value. That means earlier the value was 8 on third element location. Now we are assigning -1 to that particular location, or to the third element. So what will happen eventually, this -1 is going to replace the value 8 on the third element location. Okay, so the previous value is replaced once you have assigned a new value. Likewise, if suppose we wish to make changes into fifth element to 0. Now when I say fifth element, that means the index value will be 5 minus 1, that is 4. Again, if I write the statement like mark in the square braces 4, this square braces 4 is representing which particular element we are talking. That means the index location, the value, right, where we want to make changes. And the assignment operator is that it assigns the value written on right hand side to the location of left hand side. So location is mark and the index 4, and we are now assigning a value 0. So eventually by executing this statement, what will happen in my original array? The value 9 will be replaced by 0. This is how we change the value of an array element. I I believe that rather than telling you in theoretical perspective, we should at least practice one example set live on online compiler to make you better understand that how do we declare the array, how to put or initialize the values inside the array, and then how we can fetch the or how we can access the value from the array element. So let's take one quick programming example, and the purpose of the program, the objective of the program is just to create an array of some size, let's say 5 itself, and then in that array we wish that the user will input certain integer values. So with the for loop we will be scanning all the values. Once we have stored the values in the array, then it is time to display or print the values which is stored in the array, to make you understand that how can we access it. So let's move towards the programming part. As you can see in the video itself, the objective of our program is that the program will take 5 values from the user and store them in an array, and then further it will print the elements stored in the array. This is our task for which we are writing the code. This is the online compiler. If you have not installed C in your computer system, then you can eventually use online compilers to execute your C. I'm sure I do not need to tell you about the what does this statement hash include stdio.h means. It's the standard input output header file, and with this preprocessor we are including the code because the functions of standard input and output are defined in this header file. Now starting with our main code, I have here defined integer values. This is my array which is of integer data type, and values is the name of my array, and in the square braces I have defined the size of the array, which is 5 in this case. Now a simple print statement, enter 5 integers. So what I'm trying to do, we'll first display the message that enter 5 integer. Once the user will enter 5 integer values, those values will be taken as an input, stored in the array. In order to store in the array, what we have to do, we have to access the elements of array one by one and assign the values to them. For this, we are using a for loop. Now you can see in the for loop, the value of indexes starting from 0. It is because our indexes in array starts with 0, and the loop will go till n-1. Here value is 5. So we have written less than 5, but for making the code more independent in terms of size, you can here simply define n as well, and n will be decided by the size of the array. Okay, that how many elements you prefer. Now with the scanf statement, it's easy. This ampersand is for representing the address of. Okay, so we are going to put the values or scan the value or store the value at the address of the array, and at which location we are talking about index I. So what will happen? The first value will be stored at index value 0, the second index value 1, the third index value 2, and so on till n-1. That means 4. Once we have stored all the elements of the array, then we are going to print the integers which we have stored. So I've just simply written one line displaying the integers to make you clear that up till this point we have entered, and then further we are getting the output. Now again, in order to print the element, you need to access the element by using index values. Okay. So again, our loop will start from the value of I as 0 because the initial index is 0, and we will be going towards till the value 4. Once we reach to the situation where the value of index is 5, then that means we already reached to the end of our array. Okay, so what I believe with this program, once I enter here 5 integer values, so let's enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For simplicity, I have taken these ones in the sequence. We can have different as well. And when I press enter, what I'm expecting, first we'll see displaying integers, and then we'll see the first element, and then from the next line we'll see the next elements, because in the print statement we have used here the /n, which is for new line. So let's press the enter. Okay, now you can see first it is showing displaying integer. Okay, and 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the integer values which we have entered, and these values are kept in the or stored in the array, and we are getting this display by accessing one by one the values from the array itself. Let's move back to our slide part. I'm sure the example must have been helpful. What you can do, you can pause the screen in the video, and you please note down the program and try to execute by yourself, because in any programming language, once you understood the syntax part or the methodology or the method, how to do something, then it is very much required that you practice it more and more. Then only you will be able to achieve the correctness of the syntax as well as the logical part. So let's have a quick recap in the form of summary what we have learned in this video tutorial. Array can store fixed size sequential elements of same data type. That means if array is of integer data type, all elements will be integer data type. If array is of float data type, all elements will be of float data type, and every element will be having a fixed size. And the items stored at contiguous memory locations, and elements can be accessed randomly using indices. So we have seen that in the memory presentation, that the contiguous memory locations are chosen to keep the item. There will be no gap in the memory location. And once you have the base address, the address of the first element, then you can traverse to the next element by just adding the fixed size line. And the other way to access the elements randomly is by using the indices or index value. The important point is the index of the array starts with 0, not 1, and the size and type of an array cannot be changed once it is declared. So if you have declared the type as integer, you cannot modify it later on in float. And if you have declared that this particular array is going to hold 5 elements, then you are not going to edit or change it later on. That's all in this video tutorial. I hope you find that informative, and here are some reference books, so which you can either buy as a paperback copy or Kindle edition, or online PDFs are also available, like Bala Guruswamy, Dennis and Richie in C programming, and your Shom's outline with C programming. These are very good reference books if you want to study in deep. And for programming example parts, you can also follow Yashwant Kanitkar, let us see. And I suggest that nowadays so much content is available online as well, from let's say tutorial points, W3 schools, Java T Point, and like those type of blogs and tutorial sites. You can find out to practice more, though the concepts you can take from here, and then you can practice a little bit more on the programming aspect by following these things. So that's all in this video. Here is my contact information. If you feel that you want to have more emphasis, you want to have you have any confusion in any kind of example set, or any queries, I'm very happy to answer and entertain your queries. You can always contact me. Thank you so much. That's all from my side, and in the next video we'll be learning a lot more about the array part, and as well as their advantages, disadvantages, and we will definitely try to look for how do we change the value in the array as a live programming example set. Till then, take care, keep learning. Thank you.